Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. So essentially, this episode dealt with the new client being a inventor named Jenny. Essentially, she made this automatic car system known as EJ. And apparently it ended up killing one of her friends. That's one of the people that kind of worked on a project with her, Adam. And the whole situation is kind of whether she's liable for it or not. Like whether, because it's like, the question is, was it human error that led to the Adam getting killed? Or was it, the actual machine's problem? And that's kind of where the case kind of ended up coming down to. Obviously, there was a lot more to it than that, because you end up finding out so many different things. Like, you could pretty much early on figure out just by the way Jenny was talking about things, and because there were certain things about EJ that she talked about, like for instance, like how she's like, oh, the way, because Bull commented on the fact is that EJ talked, yes, had a very human-like personality, but talked in a specific way, and it's like, oh, dude, would you want, I have a psychology major, like I have all these different psychology degrees and stuff. I could help you kind of give it a better, more realistic personality. And she's like, no, I like it the way it is, And she kind of talked about the fact is that it was someone that, it kind of reminded her of. And we kind of get to that in a second. But it also, she also, brought up ended up getting brought up by Carter. Like, the reason why she started EJ was because of a car accident she was involved in. That's what inspired her to make this. And because the whole point of this was actually, she started with the best of intentions. It's because, car accidents are pretty, good reason why a lot of people die. It's actually, it's very sad, just the large number of people that die in a car accident just in a year alone. And the fact of the matter is, I forgot the exact number they threw out there in a TV show, but I remember hearing that same number today in something else I was listening to, and it was thousands difference. There's at least 1,000 or so difference in number, and it's I guess it's kind of just a range of things, but I guess it also depends on where that, estimate is pulled from, what particular year was that pulled from, nevertheless, but the purpose of the car was to kind of reduce that number. But because you end up finding out later on, but I kind of pulled it together because I was like, okay, so obviously it has to have something to do with someone that she cared about died in a car accident. There's a reason why she cared, she put so much time and effort into this project. Because you see at the beginning, she's working on other stuff too, but EJ is kind of her main focus. She's kind of let all these other projects that she kind of go to the wayside. Because even Bull's are any of those realistic? She's like, yeah, but EJ's kind of taking the main of my focus, so. That's a big reason why Bull wanted to take her as a client, was because the fact is that he knew, she has great potential. It's she's done this much in the 26 years she's been alive. So it's what can she do in the next 26 years? So it's because normally in a case like this, it's really hard to really go along, really be sympathetic, because it's it's kind of corporate versus, your everyday man. In Jeannie's case, she's not the kind of top branch person in the company you expect, because she's very loopy. She's a very kind of down to earth, barely, can finish her own sentence, because she's just a little scatterbrained at times, so, which kind of goes in her favor. But nevertheless, getting around to it, you end up finding out that EJ is actually based on a person that Jenny knew, named Evan Johnson. She was actually a boy that she was in love with, but he died in a car accident, which she says it was her fault, but it was never really brought up I thought it was going to be a situation where it's no, she blamed herself, but she wasn't really at fault. But I guess it is kind of, she was at fault, I guess, in this situation, because they were never really went around clarifying that, being I thought it was going to be a situation where she just felt at fault, but it's no, it seems like she might have been, I said, I don't know. And for her, this whole EJ project, it's not, because she even said it to Bull. It's it's just a machine to you, because it's for Bull, he's I'm trying to help you win this, not because it's I'm not trying to save EJ, I'm trying to save you, because it's if there's a difference between your you losing investors and stuff like that. Sure, if the machine gets blamed for it, sure, you're gonna lose investors and stuff like that. But if it's if the machine takes fault for it, but it's not if she doesn't, literally her company will go under it. If there's fault found in her machine, and it's kind of she would lose I know I'm not saying this right. I know I'm kind of scatterbrained at the moment myself, but essentially, there's one side of it. She basically could lose investors, sure, but she still have like the machine. She could still work and stuff. And then the other side is she'd basically lose the entire company. And it's like, I'm here to save the machine. You, not a machine. And for her, she's like, it's more than a machine. Because she even said it herself at the beginning, because it's like, she referred to it as a he, and then Bull kind of caught it. It's like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, it helps when you kind of kind of personify it a little bit. You spend enough time around the machine, you kind of personify it. It's like she personified it because for her, EJ isn't just a machine she was working on. And in her own way, it was her keeping Evan alive. Because he was the man that she loved so much, and it was just kind of like she didn't want to kind of she didn't ever want to let him go, and so she wanted to keep him alive in some shape or form. That's why she dedicated so much time to EJ. It was because in some form, it was like her keeping Evan alive, keeping him alive at the very least to her, Because when it came to EJ, there was kind of like a very interesting. I forgot exactly what it was they exactly called it. It's essentially kind of like, how different things when it comes to like robots and stuff is like the law of robotics. Like there's certain laws they kind of have to follow. Well, EJ kind of has one, but basically like EJ has to follow a set rule. Like if there's a situation that EJ can't find itself out of, or 100% a safe way out of it, then EJ has to make a decision that will cost the least amount of human life. So say there's a situation, the example they use is like, okay, there's a tree that fell down in the road. There's a car on the left that has 2 people. There's a car on the right with 3 people. It's like, which car will EJ slam into to make sure that the least amount of people die? And the dude Dean was like, basically the car would keep going straight onto the tree, basically killing you, the passenger inside of it, because out of the other 2 routes, you dying is kind of the safest route because that ensures the most people survive. So, which it's messed up, and Jenny didn't really appreciate it because it felt like she's like, they're demonizing what EJ stands for. Like I said, it's there to save lives, and they're acting like it's some kind of monster. Because even the people who had earlier on in the episode driven in it were like, whoa, I was in that thing that was going to, like, could potentially kill me. Whoa. I mean, but with a system like that, that's the thing, though. Like, it's very flawed. Like, you can't really, like, it's the fact of the matter is it is a machine. No matter how intelligent it is, you could argue that its intelligence will get in the way because it'll run through all these different simulations. It'll run through thousands upon millions of simulations on what's the best route, and then it'll be like, it will make a decision to be like, okay, this is the best course of action. And it's like, it doesn't have that human emotional aspect of being like, no, like, because there's certain things a human would do that would be to a machine would not be rational. And I guess in a circumstance like that, will be a circumstance where it's like, hey, you need to be rational in a sense like that. I mean, if you're in a situation like that, what would be the human reaction to it? I guess the human reaction would be to try, to be something like, okay, try and make it so that I don't die, and neither do the other 2 people on this side die. I guess the easiest thing to do would be trying to slam on brakes as quickly as possible. That way you minimize the risk, but I guess like in a machine's head, it's like that's a calculated risk where it's like, because you take what EJ says to Bull earlier in an episode, it's like, yeah, you have like a 91% success rate, and then Bull's like, no, it's much higher. It's like, no, Miss Jenny told me to kind of I did a lot of calculations. I'm incorporating this case in it as well because just based on everything that's there, it's like you're going to lose this case. So it's based on information. It doesn't know there are aspects to things that can't be calculated. There are such things as luck and chance, as well as the human condition, because that wasn't something that was factored into the trial. Is like the fact is that because Bull understands people to the way a machine could never understand them. He understands, like you could give a machine, you can tell a machine all this information, but can't really know a person like people can. So, which I don't want this to turn into something. I know it's stupid, but I don't want it to turn into a thing where I'm bashing machines or something like that. Because that was kind of an interesting thing, kind of coinciding with it, is that we ended up finding out something about Benny this episode was that he does not like technology. He kind of likes to keep things simple. It don't seem like it's a situation where it's like he's afraid of technology in a sense of like a Terminator type of thing. Maybe possibly, but it never really went in that depth. It was just kind of like, why not keep things simple? It's like all this technology stuff. It's like a pen and paper can do me just fine. So I mean, because I really appreciated like going back to those jurors that were riding in the car, the automatic car, riding in EJ. You had Benny being like, because Bull volunteered him for it, and Benny's like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, go ahead and get in the car." He's like, "You're doing this just to humiliate me, aren't you?" He's like, "Of course I am." And it's like basically seeing like Benny being the defense team, being the lawyer on the defense team, it kind of like seeing him kind of being a little freaked out would kind of inspire the jurors to be like, oh no, oh man, this tough lawyer is a chicken. I might as well give it a shot, just to be like, because they're even kind of making fun of him a little bit for the fact is that he's so freaked out about it. And there was this interesting thing too, where it's so interesting how like in this there were multiple things that Bull kind of makes you kind of bring to the surface like a lot. One, that you should never trust the client. It's kind of a rule that he brought up in this episode. It's like, whatever, say it with me now, and everyone said it. Never trust the client, which is something we've seen even in the episode so far. It's like the clients always hold something back because in their mind they're like, okay, obviously that's not important to the case because it's something personal and it's like it's not going to do anything. It's not connected to the case at all, Two, it's like I guess there's certain things people feel like are too embarrassing to admit, like they don't want to like be shown in a bad light. I guess they feel like if they told the entire truth that maybe Bull and his team wouldn't stick on their side. Like, I mean, it's not even just them. I feel like that's an application to everyone. Not everyone wants to tell the truth immediately. People tend to hold stuff back because it might paint them in a bad light. And so there were points where you ended up finding out that, yeah, the fact is that Jeannie was in fact keeping stuff from them. And that stuff being the fact is that essentially Carter had some issues kind of like with drug abuse a little bit just because he got hurt seriously in the past and he kind of got hooked on, I think, some medication. Basically, things got to the point where Jenny kind of had to revoke his access a little bit. But it turns out the reason why EJ went a little nuts was because someone had hacked into it, like a backdoor hack into the system, and you end up finding out later on that was Carter who did it. But it wasn't meant to be as a malicious thing of like, oh, he's going to use EJ to kill Adam. It's like, no, he did it because he wanted to ruin the project a little bit, like because it turns out that Carter actually was in love with Jenny, but the feelings weren't like Jenny didn't feel the same way for him because for her, all she had eyes for was EJ, who was Evan, the boy she still had in her heart. That's all she was focused on. So he wanted to just kind of destroy EJ as a means of, getting him out of the way. Like the words the Bull users, like get rid of his love rival is what that came down to. So it wasn't with malicious intent, but that whole situation led to like the system being open, and that let the guy Dean kind of, do what he needed to do, which involved killing Adam and later on Carter. I mean, mainly he killed Adam because it was just because like he needed to kind of get control of EJ to kind of do what he wanted to, so he can, I guess, get in a more favorable situation with it, I guess. I'm not 100% like, he's the money guy, so I don't really see 100% what he really gained from doing what he did, but he was the one behind it. He killed Carter to cover up his tracks, because Carter was the one who did it, but it was most likely, it's like Dean kind of convinced him, it's like, oh, it's obviously you're in love with Jenny, so and she, she doesn't quite fit the same, so it's like, why don't you try and get rid of her project, kind of tamper with it. And probably like, Dean, like Carter probably came to him, telling him, it's like, oh, like things went wrong. He was probably going to tell the truth or something about the fact is that Dean's the one that told him to do it. But, I mean, to me, that's like the very most base reason to do a lot of things. Like, it's like kind of the human condition. Like why you do anything is out of love/jealousy. It's just the main reason to do a lot of things. Well, love, jealousy, and hate, which is like when you look at things like they're so closely tied, especially jealousy and hate, because it's just like very close to one another in my opinion. Like if you want to get all technical with it, but I'm not going to get all super into it like that. The other thing I was going to trail back to, I know I completely went off board there a little bit, sorry, was the fact is you got to see Bull being a little more manipulative in this episode. The first time was with Jenny in the courtroom when Adam's wife Erica was on the stand, that basically he had Benny kind of push her buttons, kind of almost like pushing her into a corner, asking all these questions. about like, oh, the reason why Erica's doing this is like, oh, you're doing this for money, right? Oh, you and your husband went to marriage counseling, asking all these type of questions. And then Jenny kind of couldn't take it. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Erica. I didn't know they're going to ask these type of questions. The point of that was to kind of put the jury, to make the jury more sympathetic of her. Be like, the fact is that, oh, it's not, she can't be all bad if she's up there literally jumping to defense of the person that's literally suing her. So it's like, she can't be all bad. So there's that. Then there's a whole situation with putting Dean on the stand was to kind of force her to realize about the whole situation, to kind of be like, to force her to kind of stop looking at EJ as like a person, as Evan, but look, well, this is before he knew about Evan, but treat EJ more like a machine that has its flaws, like in the way it operates and stuff. And then the third time was with the car, when they were in there and like EJ's trying to kill them. It's like in my brain, it never once crossed my mind that like, oh yeah, Cable might be behind that too. Because I was like, oh man, the killer tried to kill you, but it's like that never came up. And then she confronts Bull about it. She's like, yeah, you're the one behind it. She's like, I kind of figured Cable had to have something to do with it because it's like a little too coincidental. And I did appreciate what Cable was saying. She's like, oh man, I'm about to save, the one and only Jenny. I forgot Jenny's last name. But then Bull's kind of like, yeah, don't forget I'm back here too, Cable. And there was also that situation with Cable, like, we got it a little bit, like, that was kind of an interesting thing about this episode, too. I feel like out of anyone, like, Cable's kind of, like, there, like, in the episodes, but I feel like this is kind of an episode we got to see Cable a little bit more. I mean, because it dealt with machines and stuff, and she's kind of like, she is the hacker, she's the hacker and everything. We also got to see Bull because she kind of had Bull pretend to be this particular, like basically when they were kind of looking through the drive that led to Adam's death and everything, the drive system, the thing he was supposed to, the flash drive to update EJ's system and whatnot. They were basically looking over that, and Cable needed some help getting into it a little bit more to kind of sift through the data. Ends up getting another hacker, but that hacker only wanted to meet with her if she brought a specific hacker named Goliath something. And so Bull this pretends to be that particular guy, and then the guy's like, "You're not Goliath." And then Bull just reaches for his tablet, smashes it down, picks it up, and smashes it even more on the ground. And he's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, you totally are Goliath." And then Cable's asking, she's like, "How did you know that was going to work?" He's like, because Cable had told him the reason why hackers have their specific names is because their names kind of represent who they are personality-wise, as kind of as well as, their traits, essentially, kind of who they are. And so it's like the reason why he did what he did was because it fell alongside the name. It's like, I'm Goliath, so it kind of had like a raging Goliath, essentially. So that was pretty cool. Kind of like Taylor at the end of it all. I mean, when it was all said and done, like we had Jenny, it seems like she's giving up on the EJ project because there are other things that she could work on too, that she, like I said, they all kind of took a back burner to that. Because for Bull, he was like, it was all about letting EJ go, because you don't have to let go of Evan. Evan will always be a part of you, but Evan is Evan and EJ is not Evan. It's just kind of something you created to kind of keep him alive. But as long as you remember him, he's always going to be alive in your heart. You don't need some machine to keep him alive, because more so than anything, EJ was also a reminder, like, I guess a way of constantly blaming herself for Evan's death too. So, but finally, like, taking that step forward by, getting rid of EJ. And because Bull talked about the fact is that he kind of knows how she feels, because it's like going through his life, he's kind of left some people behind too. And at the end of the episode, he's calling someone. At first I was like, oh, is it gonna be his dad or something? But he calls a lady named Amy. Now, I don't know what that's about. Maybe Amy specifically is just one of many people he was going to work down the list on. Or maybe Amy's someone that's come up in the show before and I just don't remember. Like, I know I'm such an idiot. Do let me know, like, is that someone that's come up in the show before? Or is that just like a new character? It sounds like it might have been someone new. I wonder if that's something we'll see in the next episode or not. Or was that just kind of, like I said, just kind of like a one-off thing where it's like, okay, him trying to make amends by connecting with people he kind of left behind in his life. But the point I was getting across, I kind of skewed away from it. The fact is that Bull, we got to see it, like, you kind of forget the fact is Bull is very big into manipulating people. He gets inside of their heads. I obviously with the best of intentions because he's trying to get people to see certain things and realize certain things. But at the same time, like it's you see him do it with the jury and stuff like that. The reason why he picks a specific jury is because he knows he can sway them in certain ways and stuff like that. Which is like, man, that's kind of douchey when you actually think about it a lot. But at the same time, it's like for the best reasons because I mean, for him, it's not about skewing the truth to a certain degree. It's basically, like I said, making people realize certain things. See, like basically, like in this case, like when it came to making that whole situation of making Ginny defend Erica, that was to show people the kind of person Ginny was. It wasn't, necessarily just to manipulate. I know it's one of those situations like, does the ends justify the means? It's kind of a bad thing to do, but it was for good reasons, if that makes any sense. But it's just like, to me, it's like, you kind of forget the fact that, like, I tend to forget, like, he does manipulate people, and it's like, I don't know, it's just, it's not like it's never been blatant. It's blatant in every episode, but I guess for some reason in my head it pops up even more, especially because Ginny points it out. It's like, oh yeah, you manipulated me. So, I don't know. Very good episode. I didn't see anything at the end saying like, oh yeah, the next episode. So usually that means there's not going to be an episode next week. I could be wrong. So be on the lookout. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.